Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome to Module 4, Session 5, Understanding Gastrol's Principle, Proximity and Pragnanz, Part 2. So let's dive in. In our previous session, we have talked about proximity and how proximity plays an important role in the overall composition, especially in visual design. And we also have looked into how proximity helps any users to navigate through the overall compositions, create balance and uniformity in the overall composition. We have taken consideration of multiple examples in terms of logo design, branding, right? And apart from that, we have also looked into how digital space, how proximity plays an important role in terms of menu and overall layout design. Today, we'll take consideration of pragnanz for this session and we'll go through in detail with multiple examples associated to that. So in this slide, this talks about briefly what Gastrol's principles of pragnanz means. So this Gastrol's principles of pragnanz, also known as law of simplicity, asserts that the human brain perceives and interprets visual stimuli in the simplest, most organized way possible. This means that when presented with a complex or ambiguous images, our mind tend to reduce them to their most basic form or patterns. So let's take the example of this Olympic logo. So if you see, all the circles are interlocked with each other, right? And the sense of interlock has been perceived by our brain very quickly, even though the image has been designed in a 2D space. And this is what Gastrol's principles talk about, where our brain quickly reduce the complexity of the space and tend to perceive it in such a way that it's more simpler for us to consume the overall information. So as a graphic designer or as a visual designer, this is a very important observation or exploration we can do while we try to project any kind of visual image which tend to look like more simple, although the process may have some complexity. So what I mean by that is, like, let's see. So in this Olympic logo, you can see our brain has easily understood that these circles are interlocked with each other. But if you consider the overall idea in a 2D space, definitely you can see how the the yellow circle is being cut down, right, with the blue. So to achieve this, you have to cut the yellow circle such that the blue seems to be continued over it. So you are basically creating a layer of it. So in the background layer, the yellow circle is there. In the top layer is the blue circle. But again here it's reverse. And because of such kind of reverse representation, the idea of 3D, so the overall logo feels interlocked. As I said, the sense of 3D can be projected. And this is where most of the graphic designer take the benefit of principle of pragnanz, because although the process can be complex, but when we see the image, it feels very much simple in nature. And we as a designer can take the benefit of it such that it creates some kind of engagement or some kinds of attention to the overall composition. Okay, so let's consider this example, right? Again, this is an entrance arch of a heritage building, right? And you can clearly see there are so many multiple repetition, right, of geometric lines, arches associated to this entrance, right? Again, there are doors, and there are different repetition, and overall composition, you can sense that this feels like an entrance towards a heritage building. And but the complexity, again, your brain quickly ignores the complexity of such kind of repeated elements, but it quickly perceives that it has the essence of entrance towards this door. And with time you will go through all the details associated with it, right? And understanding the overall details create a sense of engagement to the overall composition. So this is where, again, how architects also take the benefit of Pragnanz, where they use multiple details associated to the composition, which creates an engagement to the overall composition. But as a whole, your brain will quickly perceive what the overall functionality of that space is, or what the architect is trying to project with that particular space. Yeah, let me ask you a small question, like what do you see in this image, right? So most of you have by now understood that this image is related to koi fish, right, in a small pond with two flowers, right? Uh, and if we zoom a little bit, you can see the pixelated version of it, right? And the overall idea of this composition is about to explore the concept of pixel art, which is given to the MDes group, and they have came up with some kind of composition. This is one of the composition, and this is done by Sonal Deshpande, MDes student of IIT Hyderabad. And you can see how interestingly the overall pixel art has evolved. And if you see the details of it, right, again, if I zoom more, the more the details you can observe how the overall composition is made just with square. And when I reduce the size, right, somewhere or the other, you can easily identify the concept of the pixel, and the overall picture, right, seems like a coefficient with much more detail. And why the details is more prominent here rather than when I'm zooming it, right? In terms of the anatomy I'm talking about, right? So when you see the anatomy here, when I zoom more, the anatomy seems to disappear quickly. But when I zoom out and make it smaller, the anatomy seems like more prominent. And this is where our brain tries to create meaning. So when the things are like when I have tried to zoom out, the overall anatomy seems more consumable, because my brain is ignoring all the details and it's trying to make the overall meaning out of that particular thing. But when I zoom in, right, the details are more observed, and again it tries to create within that segment. So maybe your brain is trying to create meaning within this segment, and overall. So sometimes most of the designers also go through this process of zooming in and zooming out if they are trying to make something. So again, it's again correlated to the idea of principles of Pragnanz, where the designer is again trying to see whether we are addressing the overall composition as a whole, or such kind of details, if look from far, make more sense, or if look from closer, make more sense, right? And based on that, most of the designer also tweak or changes the dimension or size of that particular composition such it makes more sense in a specific distance. Okay, so this is a very good example of Pragnanz, where you can see just by using squares, the idea of the pixel has been projected, and with that you can sense some kind of anatomy out of it. And primarily our displays, right, if you see our mobile display, our monitors, right, our desktops, our laptops works on this. The idea of pixel has been always part of the technology. And if you see with more dense pixel, you tend to look more, the overall image seems to be more refined. If the pixelations are not dense in nature, you will sense the overall image to be jittery. So if you type anything in a smaller typeface, right, automatically you will sense some jittery in if the pixelation is not dense. So that's why when we buy any kind of screens, right, we always seek for how much the pixel density is, right? And based on that, even if you're going for print and publication, so especially in print, designers always are asked to go for 300 dpi, which is like the ideal way of going for print, such that there is less pixelation when you try to address the image. So the more the dense pixel it is, the better the overall output will be. So that's why when I was reducing, it is also associating with the idea of density. So when I'm zooming in more, right, the density is getting reduced because of the square size is getting bigger. And this is where the idea of pregnance plays an important role. So as a designer, as I say, we need to consider this in a very like a sensitive way. Yes, so since we are talking about the pixel concept, similarly, the idea of traffic light also works, right? And this is, there are multiple small LED lights which are associated with it. And with that, you can see some kind of movement in the overall composition based on how the light emits how the overall light emits. So again, this is a similar example where the idea of pregnance plays an important role in terms of depicting any kind of information. Okay, so now let's come to the discussion of logo design, right? So this is a logo of Hindustan Unilever, and you can see the overall logo to be an anatomy of alphabet U, which is the initial of Unilever, right? And here you can see your brain has quickly comprehended the overall anatomy in such a way that it creates a simpler representation of the alphabet U. Although if you see in detail, if you zoom in, so you can sense there are multiple different elements which are associated each other in the name of principle of proximity. Again, we are talking about proximity where things are close by each other, and because of proximity, the idea of the overall logo seems to be complete, because your brain is again creating a imaginary image which is again associated to the overall logo design. So when you see this image, right, you can see how the idea of the elements which are associated to this logo are being addressed. So if you go through the details, you can see all this logo, all these elements are associated to the overall composition of the anatomy of alphabet U. And maybe you might have missed some of the elements, but when I am trying to zoom in, your brain is again trying to comprehend each and every element associated to that. And that's how our perception changes. This is what pregnancy is about. So if I'm zooming the details, right, now you are isolating the overall elements in as a whole, and you are looking it as a singular representation rather than as a group. But when it's arranged in the anatomy of alphabet U, primarily I am pretty sure most of you have ignored the details. But when I have zoomed in, suddenly you are looking at, okay, it has a heart, it has a dove, right? A garment is mentioned here, right? Like there are multiple dots, ink bottles are associated with it, like coal, vegetables, spoon, those things are again associated to it. But but initially those things are being ignored by our brain, because our brain tend to create simplistic representation, then it goes to the detail of it. Okay, so in that way, this is how the logo design designers also take the benefit of the principle of pregnance, where you tend to see all the complex image, and your brain easily creates a overall pattern, right, and it refines it to a more simplistic representation. Again, with the same idea, this is another logo design where you can see how the anatomy of M has been taken into consideration, right? And within this, you can easily see how the anatomy includes some of the symbolic representation of medicine, right? And home, right? There are again some of those shows even hands, tape water, right? So this is designed by Spencer Du Bois in 2010, and it is associated to health work, sending medicals expert to major emergency to mobilize aid, shelter, and treatment. and that's why such kind of symbols are part of the logo. So again, if you're trying to design any kind of logo, so somewhere or the other it should connect with the idea of the brand, right? And this is a very interesting compositions where the all the elements associated in terms of medical health, right, shelter and treatment are being projected, are kept inside the logo, just to give a essence of that particular brand's philosophy. Yeah, so this is again another logo which you can see. It is the University of East and Anglia University, UK, and you can see how U, E, and A are being projected in such a way that your brain has quickly identified the anatomy of A, and it's associating with this star, which is kept in such a way that it extends from E, and it's completing the essence of A here. Okay, and this is a very interesting logo in that way, how your brain, again, it simplifies, because if you consider only this segment of this logo, right, this stem of this logo, though, so your eyes will be unable to focus on the overall meaning, but when it looks as a whole, it tries to create the meaning, so automatically your brain is again reading you as a whole, even though the U is just a half portion of it. But because of the pregnance, your brain is quickly creating meaning out of it, although the overall meaning is incomplete in nature, right? So, but again, you tend to read this as an anatomy of U. Again, when you are looking in E, again, it's ignoring the part of U, and you can easily read the alphabet E here. Similarly, the alphabet A can be read using this star as a point of reference. So again, there are multiple complexity, but your brain is quickly trying to create meaning out of it, and it's completely like consuming the information as a whole rather than individual. That's why it becomes more meaningful in nature. Yes, so now if you see this image of a zebra, right? So this is again interesting to see how the overall composition of this zebra has been done just by using black lines, right? And those black lines are overall composed in such a way that it creates an anatomy of the zebra. And if you see how, sorry, if you see how the overall compositions has a more better harmonious representation, and your brain can easily identify the anatomy rather than it's counting whether which portion is the white, which portion is the black, right? So it automatically creates a mental image, and it creates the essence of this animal quickly, without going in a detail. So as a whole, it creates the overall meaning in terms of representing the idea. Next is principles of pregnancy in terms of visual display, right? So this is the segment where we are trying to see how visual display is playing an important role in terms of creating such kind of representation. So this is an artwork done by Subodh Gupta. The artwork is named as Very Hungry God. And here you can see all the cutleries of Indian household. And with those cutleries, again, the anatomy of a skull has been projected. So when you see the skull from far, right, your brain can easily comprehend the anatomy of the skull. And when you go in detail, your brain are ignoring the complexity of the how the cutleries, right, all the utensils which are associated with the overall compositions are ignored, whether it's overlap, whether it's layer. So those kind of details are ignored by your brain. You can see how cutleries and the utensils associated to these compositions create a holistic representation of a skull. Okay, and this is where again, this is primarily an artistic expression, and this is where again most of the artists take the benefit of principles of pregnance to express some kind of meaning, which are associated or rooted based on the theme they are trying to address. And I would recommend more, if you are unaware about Subodh Gupta, kindly look into it. He has done multiple explorations in terms of the idea of Pragnanz, where he used primarily Indian household items to compose his expressions. Again, this is a mad crab, the art installation created by waste, plastics, and similar non-biodegradable waste at Fort Kochi. And this is done by Ajay Kumar. And you can see how your brain has quickly ignored the idea of specific plastic bottles or waste when it at first it has observed the anatomy of the crab. So it identified the overall anatomy, and once it has identified the anatomy of crab, automatically it's going to the details like how it has been made, right? What are the elements it has used, what are the raw materials they have used, and based on that it creates the overall composition more engaging. And this is where most of the artists, as I said, take the benefit of Pragnanz to express something which are very much within our space, and to use different medium just to give us a recall on how things are being projected in a different way. Okay, so this is a interesting poster in terms of print and publication, and this is designed by Colomans Moser. Okay, and you can see how the overall composition is very much interesting to see in terms of the details, right? Initially you can see three ladies, which is again a sense of balloon can be observed. A textured way of representing the balloon is can be observed. Again, a circle, right, within other trees. So the overall composition seems very much visually balanced, where we have talked about asymmetric and symmetric. So primarily this has symmetric visual weights, right? And you can see how the composition plays a very interesting and intriguing overall representation. And you can see how typeface are being also kept in such a way that it balances and it complements the overall background associated to it. And you can see how the overall representation again has been used using geometric squares as a part of the composition. So again, in terms of visual display, primarily when you have observed the overall poster, right, your brain is ignoring most of the details, and it's comprehending you with the idea of the characters which are associated to that. Again, it presumes that these are part of the overall compositions. And then gradually when you go to the details, you can sense all the typography associated to the overall representation. Yes, so this is again another poster which was designed. Again, this is designed by Thomas Mans, and you can see how the poster was a part of 26 letters illuminating the alphabet poster series of an exhibition at British Library in London. And it was developed and curated by 26 who promote writing in business and International Society of Typographic Designer. So Thomas Mans of Thomas Mans and Co. and the writer Mike Reed created X using 10 stories featuring the letters that includes the discovery of X-rays, how Malcolm X got his name, and Robert Priest's short story, The Man Who Broke Out the Letter X. And the artwork features the rainbow colored three-dimensional X constructed from the passages of these stories. So you can see how there are different narrative associated to that. And although the overall narratives becomes a very vague representation of the details, like it becomes the part of the details, and you can easily comprehend the anatomy of X quickly in this particular composition. And this is where the idea of Pragnanz again is playing an important role. So your brain is ignoring the complexity of all the write-ups, right, which are associated to this, but it's directly figuring out the alphabet X, and it's reducing the overall complexity in a simpler manner such that you can comprehend the anatomy of X quickly. So this is another example where again in terms of uh, packaging design has been explored. So this is a vodka bottle. This is a concept which was designed by the Russian designer Dmitry Samal, right, of Samal design. And you can easily see how the bottle becomes very much interesting in terms of the elements which it was used, right? And it's a prime example of how simplicity in packaging design can create some kind of engaging representation. They tell the same story and obviate the need of a level or explanation. In this concept, the brand is formed from a shape of a bottle, so you can sense the shape of a bottle here, right? Although the shape of ice, it feels like it looks like an ice, right? Ice cubes, and it appears as a mount of ice cubes made from crystal glass, and that's why the idea seems to be very much engaging, because although these are made from ice cubes, like it feels like the bottle has made from ice cubes, right? The aim was to create an outstanding bottle which would be simple, characteristic, and modern at the same time, and that would reflect the main quality of the overall brand. And this is where the idea of the overall practice again plays in terms of packaging. Yes, so this is another interesting example by Danish designer Mads Jacob Poulsen, who created this packaging design for Scanwood, one of Denmark's largest manufacturer of wooden kitchenware, as shown here, right? And you can see how the kitchenware again creates a different anatomy. And Scanwood wanted to communicate that its products are made through an environmentally friendly process and are made from all natural materials. So when you see this design, it shows the visibility and implies that the product grows straight out of the ground, which combines with the tagline "Design in Denmark, made by nature." And you can see how the overall anatomy again, when we see rather than at the kitchenware, it feels like something is sprouting out, right? And your brain has again it is processing the overall packaging in such a way that it feels like it's just sprouting out of the ground. And again, the designer takes the benefit of the principle of pregnance while exploring this, and it creates more engaging and intriguing design, which is very much I would say is very much successful in terms of projecting the overall brand essence. Yes, so pregnance in terms of UI design. This is another segment which we will discuss. So here, if you see, this is again, this example has been repeated in proximity to, but in terms of pregnance, how we are again associating in a simplistic representation, right? Even though there are multiple segments, but our brain can quickly comprehend the overall idea because of the proximity, right? And we can easily understand that there are different segments associated to the overall representation. And in UI design, primarily pregnance work as a whole, catering proximity and similarity continuity as a whole of representation, and overall it becomes more simplistic way of comprehending the idea. Yes, so this is another example of the Chrome browser, and it shows how the browser can be downloaded. Apart from that, there are different segments here which shows how you can download through your mobile too, and there are different examples associated to Chrome. So they are also showing the idea of the website, the app, right, in mobile, and this is where again the idea of simplicity has been projected, although there are multiple elements associated to it. Next, again, this is another example of a model. This is a website which talks about the use of AI and how they are using AI in the modern scenario and how they are giving services in terms of using AI. And you can see there are different description associated to it, and how they have created visual representation on the right to showcase the idea of the brand. So now, as we have looked into this logo, the overall website, we are about to end this session, and in terms of understanding the idea of Pragnanz as a guest house design principles. So before going to that, let's recap what we have taken into consideration. So in Gestalt principles of Pragnanz, it underscores the importance of simplicity in design, and primarily it emphasizes that the human brain naturally seeks for order and clarity, and specifically for visual designers, it adheres to its principles is crucial for creating effective and intuitive and aesthetically pleasing designs. And by reducing complexity and focusing on essential elements, Pragnanz ensure that the visual content is not only functional but is also memorable and impactful across the diverse context. So again, now we will try to also understand, since we are about to end the overall session here, we'll also try to see what we have learned and why Gestalt's principles seems to be very much important for visual designer and how it can benefit us. So the primary thing is like the Gestalt's principles of closure, if you consider that, right, how we have started, and how again in terms of continuity, in terms of Pragnanz, in terms of proximity, similarity, right? These are very much important for visual designers because it allows us to communicate the ideas effectively, efficiently, by leveraging the views, right? And it has the ability to fill the gaps, and it also helps us to create in like the overall composition as a whole, although the elements may be incomplete in nature. So the principles also offers the advantages in terms of different segments, right? So it as you see in terms of closure, right, it actively involves the audience by making them complete the visual message. This also engages and foster a deep connection with the design, making it more memorable. So the idea of engagement definitely triggers when you consider a closure, because it helps to complete it. Your brain automatically completes the composition. It feels like you are part of the overall composition. Next is it simplifies design. What it means by that, like by suggesting forms rather than explicitly detailing them, designers can create minimal and clean visuals, and this reduces clutter and enhances the aesthetic appeal of the design. So we can take the example of the idea of repetition, right? When you see any kind of continuity, right? So when you see continuity in particular Gestalt's principle, you can see how it overall simplifies the overall composition. So if you say proximity, because of the grouping, it again simplifies to comprehend the overall idea. So primarily again, the Gestalt's principles helps to simplify design, and which becomes more aesthetically pleasing, and it becomes more minimal in terms of information display. Next is clarity. So if you see any kind of Gestalt's principles, be it closure, right, be it continuity, and it engages the essence of clarity to the overall composition. So even though the elements may be too much or it can be larger, because of the grouping, right, because of the creating segregation within the composition using Gestalt's principle, the idea of clarity can be considered to reduce such kind of complexity. So next is create visual interest. As I said, we have also discussed this, how the overall Gestalt's principles, somewhere or the other, it makes you engage, right? And it feels that composition seems more dynamic in nature, and intriguing in nature, right? And because of this, it creates curiosity in the overall representation. Again, we have also taken the consideration of how branding plays an important role, and within branding, again, how Gestalt principles are utilized to create a brand recall. So, say for example, in terms of closure, right? How WWF's panda logo seems to be very much distinctive, right? And it always engages you in terms of simplicity, right? And this is where the idea of brand recall plays an important role in terms of using Gastal's principles. So we have also taken different packaging design as an example, right? How the overall similarity is taken into consideration, right? How the idea of simplicity is taken into consideration. And because of that, there is a good connection, there is a good relationship with different products. Maybe the products can be different, but the brand is same, and somewhere the other there is a uniformity in terms of consuming such kind of representation. Next is save space and resources. So if you design well, considering the Gastal's principle, somewhere or the other you will also consider the overall grouping, right? The sense of closure in terms of representing the idea. So overall thing, when you are addressing any kind of design using Gastal's principle, you will use minimal way of representing things rather than creating complexity in the overall design. So the idea of continuity also addresses towards that, like using repeated elements in a very different way, such that there is a recall in that particular idea of representation. So with this, I am pretty sure you know why Gastal's principles are utilized, right, and how it's very much important for any visual designer to take into consideration while you are trying to compose, be it typography, be it branding, right, be it logo design, UI and UX design, right, product design. Everywhere the idea of Gastal's principles can be implemented for better or enhancing the idea of your design. So with this, we have came to the end of this overall session. I hope you have learned about the idea of Gastal's principles. Along with that, in our last session where we have include pregnancy as a part of the Gastal's principles. And by now, you will definitely, I am hopeful that you will definitely use the overall learnings and utilize it in your day-to-day design like exercises. And with this, I will end this session. In the next session will be taken by Dr. Shahid. Till then, goodbye. Have a nice day.